Hey friends, I hope your week is off to a great start. Today we're going to be trying out Sohla's recipe for pound cake. This is from her Off Script with Sohla series over at Food 52. This recipe in particular is her black and white marbled pound cake. However, I'm going to go really off script and we're going to do a tie-dye pound cake. So to achieve that, I'm going to use these natural food colorings that we bought when we did Rick's tie-dye butter cookies a while ago. So rather than black cocoa in the batter, we're going to be using both of these. So I'm super excited to see how this works out. A little bit nervous about going this far off script, but without any further ado, let's get right into it. The first thing we're gonna do is prep the streusel topping. Here in a medium bowl, I've got my AP flour. To that, I'm adding in some kosher salt and light brown sugar. And we're just gonna give this a whisk to get it all combined. So here I've got my unsalted butter, and just like Sohla said in the video, this is at room temperature. So we're just gonna drop this in, toss it around, and then pinch it through to get it evenly incorporated. So you can see the texture here. It's super crumbly when left alone, but you can pick it up and squeeze it and it holds its shape. So in the black and white version of this recipe, Sohla has us put the black cocoa in with this streusel topping, so it'll be a black streusel. However, since we're doing tie-dye, I wanted to have a little bit more fun with it. This is a technique I learned on TikTok. I've got some nonpareils here, and then I've got gold luster dust. I used this when I made my rainbow shortbread cookies a while back. So I'm gonna just dump all of this in here. And then I've also got some pearl luster dust. I'm gonna give this a quick stir to get those nonpareils coated. And I'm going to just take out small handfuls of this streusel topping, and let's see if we can get these coated in the luster dust. That seems to be working reasonably well. I'm just going to transfer these from the big bowl, coat them in the luster dust, put it in the small bowl. So we are all done with this streusel topping. Overall, I think it looks pretty good. It's very, very shimmery. It looks exactly like what I was expecting it to. Pleasant surprise when you have an idea and it works out how you hoped it would. I'm going to clean this up and then let's move on to making that cake batter. The batter for this cake comes together with just a few simple ingredients. So here in the bowl of my stand mixer, I'm going to dump my granulated sugar, kosher salt, and baking powder, along with our room temperature butter. So this recipe is all about creaming and getting air into the batter to get that lift. So as typical, I'm going to be using my scraper beater. This cuts the mixing time down because it keeps the edges of the bowl clean. That said, every about 1.5 to 2 minutes during the 6 to 8 minute mix time, I am going to stop and scrape the beater. So let's get creaming. I'm starting on low speed just to get that sugar moistened up from the butter a little bit. And then we're going to crank this up to medium-high speed. All right, so that's been 1 minute so far. So this is a little bit meta. We're using a scraper to scrape the scraper, but that's all right. We want to get this nice and cleaned off here. All right, and back to mixing. All right, so we've been mixing for a total of 2 minutes now at this point. You can see the texture is definitely lightening up some. Really, really light and fluffy. So we are looking like we're in a really good shape here. Look at this texture here. This is super, super light and fluffy. I mean, honestly, this is just unbelievable. It looks just like buttercream. So I really like the way this looks. And for me, again, 3 minutes. If you don't have the scraper beater, you might need a little bit more time. Next step is to add our room temperature eggs one at a time. So we've got 3 whole eggs, 1 yolk. But before we do that, quick poll for the audience. Whose egg carton looks like this? I am an end-to-end meeting in the middle, but curious about you. Let me know in the comments down below how you unload your egg carton. So now in our mixer bowl over medium-high speed, we are going to add the eggs in 1 at a time, stopping to scrape the bowl really well after each addition. Scrape the bowls, scrape the paddle. Egg number 2 going in here. Whole egg number 3 going in. The final thing here is the egg yolk. So we'll stop and scrape one more time here. It's super thick and luxurious. So you can see this, I mean, it still looks like buttercream frosting, but now the color is just a little bit more yellow since we've got the eggs in there. Before we move on to the dry and wet ingredients, let's prep our sour cream. So I've got the ½ cup of sour cream, and to that we're gonna add our vanilla extract. I'm just going to stir this around to get that vanilla incorporated and make sure that the sour cream isn't lumpy. So now on low speed, we're going to add in half of this sour cream mixture. I'm just going to eyeball it. We're going to mix this for about 15 seconds just to get it evenly incorporated. We're going to add in half of the flour. This is AP flour. Mix this for about 15 seconds just to get it evenly incorporated. And you know the drill by now. We are scraping the bowl, scraping the paddle. So back over low speed, we're going to add the final portion of the sour cream mixture, followed by the final half of the flour. So just giving this one more final scrape. So we are finally done with this cake. I have never scraped a bowl so many times in my life, but I think Totally worth it because look at this texture. I mean, it's super thick, super luxurious. It looks really creamy, super evenly emulsified. Now what we need to do is divide it out and color it. So I'm gonna do even parts of the plain batter, blue and pink batter. So I'm just gonna kind of eyeball it here. Now for the color. Sohla said in total to use 3 tablespoons of black cocoa here. I don't know what that translates to in blue butterfly pea powder. I'm gonna start with 1 tablespoon and we'll evaluate how it's looking. Not gonna lie, a little disappointed right now. It's a murky navy-ish, like smoky blue, which I mean, is technically blue. It's a look. It's not the look I was wanting, but I mean, it's something. So I'm gonna call it there for blue. Let's move on to pink. Same idea, I'm gonna go in with 1 tablespoon to get started of this red dragon fruit powder. All right, cool. So I think that these look okay. The color intensity is about the same. I don't love the color blue this turned, but maybe it'll look cool in the finished loaf. So let's go ahead and fill that pan up. I've got the standard size loaf pan generously greased with butter. Let's go ahead and get the batter in here. So to fill this up, we're gonna do alternating blobs of the colors, and you wanna put down half of each color into this bottom layer. Now we need to get this kind of settled down a little bit. Since we're using so many colors, I'm just gonna bang this on the counter a few times. A pretty even layer. And then next up, we want to put half of our streusel topping in here as well. So you can see it's shimmery and gold on the outside. And then when we crumble it, it's kind of plain on the inside. So I'm not going to break it into too small of pieces because I still want to have that gold kind of peeking through. I think that'll be fun. We've got gold fingers now. That's kind of fun. And now let's get the remaining batter here layered on top. I'm going to tap this again to level it out. And then let's kind of help nudge this around just to get a little bit more of an even layer here. Want to make sure we've got that batter edge to edge in the pan. So we've got our even surface now, so I'm going to take a butter knife here, and we're going to just kind of do figure 8s through the pan, just to help things kind of move around a little bit. Probably should have waited to smooth the top out until I had done this bit, but that's okay, live and learn. All right, last I'm gonna take a wet butter knife and we're just gonna score this cake lengthwise here. And this is supposed to help ensure that when the cake rises that it splits evenly in the middle and that you don't get a weird kind of lopsided crack here. Cool, so the final bit is adding the last of this gold dusted streusel on top. All right, I'm just gonna gently press the surface of this to get that streusel kind of adhered onto the top of the cake. You don't want them just running away when we bake. So we've got our cake ready to go. I've got my oven preheated to 350 degrees, and we're gonna bake this on the lower middle rack for 65 to 75 minutes. So it is a deep, big, heavy cake. So Sohla says it's gonna take a long time, expect that, but also that it's a little bit better to overbake rather than underbake. So when in doubt, leave it in for another 5 minutes. In total, my pound cake baked for 70 minutes. I let it cool in the pan for 10 minutes, then transferred it to a wire rack to cool completely. And this is the end result. You're thinking to yourself, where did the pink go? Well, it's a hard lesson in natural food colorings. The pink one apparently turns brown when you cook it. So I've got a white swirl, a tan swirl, and then my blue swirl. But aside from that, I think the technique worked out. The idea paid off the way I wanted it to. And the gold shimmer on the top came through as well. So it stayed intact during baking, so that crumble does have a little bit of a sparkle to it. Texture of the cake overall, I'm looking at it, it is super, super dense. You can see it's a really, really tight crumb there. It feels fully baked. This looks great. It feels nice. Disappointed about the pink, but will live. So let's go ahead and break this open and see how it tastes. Yeah, that looks nice. The streusel topping, super crispy. Really, really like the flavor of this. The texture of the cake is super tender and kind of melts in your mouth almost. I'm not getting a lot of flavor coming through from those natural food colorings, so that was something I was actually a little bit concerned about because they are a flavor that also brings color, so it has a dual benefit. I was worried that the flavors would compete or not complement the cake well, and that doesn't seem to be the case. It tastes very nice. And that gold sparkle is even coming through inside the cake where we sprinkled that layer of streusel down in the middle. So overall, I'm really happy with how the pound cake turned out, and I would say this is definitely a recipe worth trying. I think there's a lot of flexibility for things that you can add into this, and you can really kind of make it your own. Just be mindful of natural food dyes, I guess. But I really hope you enjoyed this week's video. If you did, please be sure to give me a big thumbs up and click subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week.